In this Next.js video tutorial, we are going to build and deploy a fully functioning, responsive personal portfolio website using Next.js 14 and CSS 3. By the end of this project, you should be able to create a responsive website using Next.js and CSS. This project is going to have a light and a dark theme functionality, so our users can toggle between the light and the dark theme. As I said, this is going to be a very responsive website, and that means this website is going to look good on every device, including mobile phones and desktop devices. And when it comes to the CSS, you are going to learn how to use CSS variables, how to use the grid system, how to use flexbox. You're going to learn how to position elements on your website. You're going to learn some animations and transitions, how to set keyframes and all that. And also, by the end of this video, you should take away some tips and tricks that is going to help you in creating any website using CSS or designing any website using CSS 3. We are going to use the context API as well, which is going to help us with the global state for our theme customization or our dark and light theme functionality. We are going to make use of a library called SwiperJS, which is going to help us with our testimonial slice. We are going to have a very simple yet intuitive contact page, which is going to help our potential clients reach out to us. We are going to have a filterable portfolio or projects page, and that is going to help our potential clients filter our projects depending on the services that we offer. And at the end of building this project, we are going to go ahead and deploy it. And that means we are going to make it available on the internet on one of the fastest servers. All right, so without wasting any much time, I'm going to walk you through the finished project. All right, so this is what we see when we visit the website, and this is the light theme. Of course, we are going to be able to toggle to the other theme, which is kind of dark, so I'll just call it the dark theme. Right, now let's get back to the light theme, and we have our navbar, of course, our logo, our nav items. We have about page, services, portfolio, and then contact. Now let's get back home. Of course, we have the button to toggle our theme, right? So when we get back to the home page, notice that we have a cool backdrop filter for our navbar. So any elements behind it, it has some blur, and because the navbar is kind of transparent or has some alpha, we can see the blur through the navbar, which is really cool, and I want to mention that. Now for the hero section or this header section, you can see that we have some text on the left side and some call to action buttons, and on the right side we have this cool animation for our image. Okay, so this is going to be your image, and we created this, or we are going to be able to create this using CSS alone. So you're going to learn how to use CSS keyframes to achieve this effect right here that you see on the right side. All right, so let's scroll down, and we have this services section, and on click of any of these are links, so on click it is going to just take us to the services page so that we can read more about the different services, or your potential clients visiting the website can read more about the different services that you offer. So on click, of course, it takes us to the services page. Right, scrolling down we have the testimonial section. So these are just testimonials from our clients. We have our frequently asked questions section as well, very neat. And of course, we are not going to use any library for this. And lastly, we have our footer section. Okay, so let's go to the about page, and of course we can click here to go to the about page, and we have this cool and very simple header section for the about, and we have our image here, some about us, and then our download CV button. Let's go to the services page, very simple as well. Let's go to the portfolio page, and here people can be able to filter the different projects that you have on here, and of course for each project they can click the link to see the demo or see the GitHub or visit the GitHub. Right, for front end we have 4 projects, for UI UX we have 3 projects, and then 1 for backend. We can click all to see all the projects that we have here. Okay, let's go to the contact page, and here is very simple. Your users can go ahead and then click to chat you on WhatsApp. In this case, I have WhatsApp on my computer here. So of course they are asking me to update my WhatsApp. That's why, otherwise I could actually just go ahead and then write a message. So your users are going to be able to click this link, and then WhatsApp on their phone or on their device is going to be launched, and they can directly message you on WhatsApp. And for Facebook Messenger, they can click to message on Facebook Messenger, and same applies to Gmail or email. That's it. Now let's see how this is going to look on dark theme. And this is our dark theme for the contacts page. Let's see how this is going to look on the portfolio page as well. And it's looking clean and very beautiful. Right, let's check the services page as well. Very clean and simple. And about. So this is the about page. And lastly, for the home page, this is how it is looking on the dark theme. Right. Okay, now let's see how this website is going to look on small devices. So this is how the website is going to look on small devices, and everything is looking clean. We have our cool testimonial section. There's the frequently asked questions section, of course, looking amazing. Let's go to the about, and this is our about section. Sorry, the about page is going to look. Services page, the portfolio page. Of course, we can still filter our portfolio projects, and lastly our contacts page. Now let's see it on dark theme as well. Let's go, and notice we have this cool drop down effect. Okay, and we are going to do this using only CSS. Right, let's go to the portfolio. Sorry, we should be on the dark theme. Let's go to the services page, and lastly the about page and the home page. All right, so this is what we are going to build in this project, a very clean and responsive portfolio website, and we have a lot to do, so let's get started. Let's go ahead and set up our hosting and domain name. And having used or having worked with many hosting providers, the one that I always recommend for everyone is Hostinger. Now in the description of this video, you are going to find a link that's probably the first link that's going to bring you to this page, and that's an affiliate link that's going to give you the best deal for your hosting purchase. Okay, so go ahead and then click that link. That's going to bring you to this page, and if you visit this page and the design is a little different, that's because it changes from time to time, right? So there's Hostinger. Let's go ahead and then check out some of the hosting web hosting packages that they have. And right here is their premium shared hosting. Okay, so for only $2.80 per month, you are going to have, or you are going to be able to host 100 websites. They give you 100 gigabytes of SSD storage, as you can see here, free weekly backups. They give you free domain name. How cool is that? For most of the hosting providers, you actually buy the domain name separately. Okay, here they give you a free domain name and a free email as well. So they give you a bunch of other stuff that are very cool and very helpful as well. Right, so this is a perfect deal for me. I'm going to go ahead and then click add to carts, and as I said, make sure you use the link in the description to get the best deal on Hostinger. All right, so this is very affordable, so I'm going to go ahead and then use the 48 months. Okay, and that's going to give me the best deal. And right here I'm going to go ahead and then enter my email. Right, so that's my email. I'm going to use PayPal. As you can see, my total is $133. Okay, now I have a coupon for you. Okay, and this is the best coupon on Hostinger. Go ahead and enter the coupon code EGATOR. Okay, this right here, enter that and apply and see what you get. You get 10% discount. So that is a very cool deal, and this is a very reliable hosting. That is why I went ahead and then got you this very important deal. All right, so we are going to go ahead and submit our secure payment. All right, so after the payment, make sure you check out your email to finish up everything, confirm your email and all that. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then log in. So right here, I just logged in and I'm going to go ahead. As I said, they give you a free domain name, so you can go ahead and then claim the domain, okay, which is really cool. On most platforms or with most hosting providers, you actually have to buy the domain name separately, which will cost you probably $10 or more, right? So the domain name I'm going to buy is Dami EGATOR, and I'm going to use the .com. Okay, so let me quickly check if this is actually available, and it is. Okay, so let's go ahead. As you can see here, that would cost me $14, but here they are giving it for me. They're giving it to me for free, which is really cool. Let's go ahead and then claim this domain name. Yeah, I forgot to mention, but they give us a free SSL as well. So let's go ahead and install that. Yep. And that's installing. And that's going to make sure every traffic on the website is secure. All right, so now let's proceed to work on the project. So I'm going to create my project here. You can create yours on your desktop, wherever you want in your computer, right? And I'm going to call my next portfolio, right? And I'm going to open this in VS Code. That's the text editor I'm going to use. And if you're new to Next.js, of course, you should have Node.js installed before you can run Next.js, okay? Right now, this is our next portfolio directory, or the folder that we just created. We are inside of it. So with control backtick, you can open the integrated terminal that comes with VS Code, and we can do npx create next app at latest, and we are going to create this in the current directory. Let's hit enter. No, we are not going to use TypeScript. Yes, length, yes. Tailwind, no. A source directory, I'm not going to use the source directory. App router, yes. Import alias, no. All right, so as you can see, Next.js is installed, and we have some of the main dependencies right here. Okay, so we have React DOM, and then Next. And I'm currently using the version 14.1, right? So perfect. Now let's go ahead and then run this. So let's do npm run dev, and we should click this localhost 3001, and I'm getting 3001 because the old project, the completed project, is running on ports 3000 right here. Okay, so this is the completed project, right? And this is what we are going to work on, 3001. All right, so our application is going to load and everything is working perfectly. Okay, so let's go ahead and then clean this code and start working on the folder structure. I'm going to clean up the files that we don't need. We don't need this favicon icon, and we don't need this page.module.css as well. Okay, and so I'm going to delete those. Now here in the global CSS, we have some styles already, and we are going to have our own styles. So, and this has some configuration for our page or our websites, and we have some variables. These are the colors, and these are root variables, right? As you can see here, we have some variables for our general container class. We have a variable for our transition, so that we have a constant or a similar transition throughout the page or the website. And as I said, we are going to come back to this so that we reference the different styles that we have. Okay, for now, let me just close this, and I'm going to bring in our asset, the images that we are going to use for this project, and that should actually be here. So right here, I'm going to drag and then drop this inside of the app directory. So we have our assets right here. and I have some textures also that we are going to use, but I'll teach you how I created that later on in the video. All right, now let's go ahead and then create the different pages that we have. And so right here, there's our home page. I'm going to remove everything. I'm going to do RAFCE, and I'm going to call this home. Okay, so now if we should come back to our project, we have home right here. So that's our home page. Okay, and some styles are taking effect already. If we look at our global CSS, if I remove this, you can see that there's a difference. Okay, you can see there is a margin on the top and then the left side, but if I put this back, okay, and save, you can see those are gone. Okay, so these are some configurations that I have for all the websites that I create. Right, so let's go ahead and then create. First, I'm going to have a folder called components, and this is where all the components that we will need is going to be created. Okay, we are going to put every component inside of this folder. So now let's create our about page. I'm going to create a folder called about and page.jsx. That's the file, RAFCE, and let's call this about page. Let's save. And before we proceed, let me show you real quick. If you don't have this extension already, I have an extension called ES7 plus React Redux React Native Snippets. Okay, and that's what I'm using to do the RAFCE. Right, that gives me that snippet. Okay, so we are going to use CSS modules. So this about page should have its own CSS file, and that's going to be about.module.css. Let's go ahead and then import the CSS file. That's going to be about module CSS. Perfect. So we have our about page. Let's create our services page as well. So services folder, and then page.jsx RFCE, and we'll do services page. Right, we save that. The next is going to be our portfolio. So page.jsx RFCE portfolio page. We save that. Oh, we did not create any CSS file for the services. So services module CSS, and we should make sure we import that. So let's import styles from services module CSS and close that. Now here in the portfolio, we should have another CSS file. So portfolio.module.css. We should make sure that is also imported. We import styles from portfolio module CSS. Perfect. Let's close those, and we will need a contact page. So contact folder, and then the page.scss RAFCE. This will say contact page. We have to create its own CSS file and then bring it in. Let's import styles from contact, and I think that's all the pages we need for this project, right? Let me refresh this real quick. About services portfolio, but yeah, perfect. So those are the pages we need. Now let's work on our layout. So inside our layout, now if we look at the finished project, you can see that the navbar and the footer is on every single page. Okay, all the pages have the navbar and the footer, right? So we should have that in our layout. Okay, so before the children prop, we are going to have our navbar and our footer components, right? So let me actually create those right here in our components. Let's have navbar footer, and inside that we have the navbar.jsx. Okay, this is just a component, not a page. All right, so I'm going to do RFCE, and yeah, let's just say navbar for now. Okay, let's have a navbar.module.css as well, so that we can have a CSS file for the navbar. Okay, we're going to do same for the footer. So footer folder, and then footer.jsx RAFCE. So just say footer, and we're going to have footer.module.css. Right, we should make sure that is imported. So let's import files footer section, or the footer component. All right, so now we have our navbar and our footer components. Let's go ahead and then import them into our layout. So let's import footer and our navbar. Okay, so in every page you have navbar and then the footer. Okay, and in between that is where our children prop is going to live, right? So if we come back here, so right here in the home page we have the navbar, the home, which is coming from the main page. Right here you can see this page.js, we have the home. Okay, so that is where the children is being rendered right here. Okay, so we have the home in between the navbar and the footer. If we go to about, we're going to have navbar, about page, and then the footer. Okay, if you go to the services page, we're going to have navbar, services, and then the footer. So I hope you understand what is happening here, right? So now we can go ahead and then work on the navbar. Okay, so that we have our navbar and the footer as well. We'll work on that after the navbar. Now, before we proceed with the navbar, I want to explain some things in the global CSS before I forget. Okay, so as I said, this is just a configuration for every element on the page, right? So we target every element, and then we set the border to 0, the padding 0, margin 0, outline 0, everything is 0. Now for the outline, there's specifically for inputs. Some inputs have some outline. Okay, so for instance, if you click inside of an input, you see some border around it. That's the outline. Okay, and the list style is mainly for unordered and then ordered lists. Okay, they have some bullets, so we remove that by setting the list style to none. So this basically means every padding or margin or any style that we give to any element should be contained. Okay, it should be inside of that box. It shouldn't extend outside. The text decoration set to none is basically for links. Links by default come with underline, so we remove that by setting the text decoration to none. Now these are the root variables. Okay, so all these are colors that we are going to use. We are going to use most of them, not all, but I just wanted to have this in this order. Okay, so we have color gray 0, which is white, and it comes all the way to color gray 900, which is the darkest color. And then we have some colors here as well. This is the primary color and this is the secondary color. We have a variable for our transition, so that we have a uniform transition throughout the website, or for all the elements that we are going to animate or set a transition on. And lastly, we have a width for our container, our main or our general container class. And in a minute, you are going to see that we are even going to use this in the navbar as well. So yeah, there's a container class that is going to be used. So On larger devices, we are going to set the width of that container class to be 76%, and then on smaller devices, it's going to change, or we are going to change it to 94%, right? And the reason why we use CSS variable is very simple. Just in case in the future we want to change anything, we just come here where the variable is set, and then we can change the value, and then every element using that variable is going to be updated to that new value. For this main styles that we have, the element of main, right? For these styles that we have for it, maybe I should leave that for when we get to the theme customization. But basically we have a main element. Okay, this main element, we are going to have it wrap around every element on the page, including the navbar and the footer section. Okay, so we will go back to the layout component, and then we will have the main element wrap around everything. But for now, let's leave it. We'll come back to it. This is the general container class that I was talking about. So the width is set to the container LG, and then we are setting the horizontal margin to be auto. So margin on the x-axis is going to be auto. Now there's a style for every link, and if the link is active, we have this. And the active link is, let's go back to the finished project. As you can see, we are on the portfolio website. That's why we have this. So that's the primary color, that's the active, right? This style is for every image. So the width is going to be 100% of its container width, and then the height is going to be the same. The display is going to be block, and object cover for every image is going to be covered. Oh, sorry, and object fit for every image is going to be covered. Now this style is for all the headings. So from H1 to H6, we have color, line height, and font weight all set to the style that we have. And we have different sizes for the different headings. So from H1 to H6, these are the values. And the BTN class is going to be put on some buttons. Okay, not all buttons are going to have the BTN class. So these are the basic styles that we have. And some buttons are also going to have another class of SM to make it smaller. I don't actually know if we are going to use it, but I had it already. So yeah, I'll just keep it. We have LG, primary, and all that. Okay, we have hover effects for the primary button as well. Now, every section, header and footer, is going to have a position of relative and a Z index of 1. Okay, and I did that for a reason. Maybe when we get there, I'll explain it a little bit more. Now, every H2, which is a direct child of a section, and every paragraph tag, which is a direct child of a section, are going to have a text align of center. So for instance, here, when we come to the home page, we have this H2, which is a direct child of this section, and then this paragraph tag, which is also a direct child of this section, right? They all are text aligned to the center, and it's the same for this frequently asked questions section as well. Okay, so we just align them to the center, and also I just have some margin for the paragraph. These styles are going to be for the SwiperJS, that's for the testimonial section. I hope that makes sense, right? And finally, we have some media queries for our global.css, which is really basic. And as I said, I'm going to leave a link to this file. So yeah, let's proceed and work on our navbar. Now, before we proceed, I'm going to paste an array of the nav items that we will need for the navbar. And in our return statement, we are going to return a nav tag instead. Let's actually give this a class of styles.nav. And since we are using CSS modules, that's how you should name your classes. Okay. Now a direct child of this nav tag is going to be a div. And let's give this a class as well. And I'm going to use the backtick so that we can have the general container class and a CSS module class of styles.nav container. Now inside the container class, we are going to have, first of all, we are going to have a link, which is coming from next/link right here. And that's going to be our logo. Okay, so let's just say EGATOR. Let's give it an href, and this is going to go to the home page. And lastly, let's give this a class of styles.navlogo. That should be enough. And next to this, we are going to have an added list of all the nav links that we need. So we have the array here already, so we can just map through it. Okay, now let me actually give this an added list, a class styles.nav items data.map. Let's go ahead and then destructure the ID, the link, and the caption, and we will return a list item which should have a key, of course, and the key is going to be the ID. And inside the list item, we are going to have a link tag where is going to have an href of the link. And for now, that should be, let's check that in our project, and we have it. Okay, so we have home, about, services, and of course we can click to go to these links. As you can see, we are currently on the contact page, about, home. Okay, so everything is working. All right, now let's go ahead, and I'm also going to have a div below the unadded list, and I'm going to give that a class nav btns or nav buttons, and inside that we are going to have a button with a class of styles.theme btn. I'll duplicate that, and this is going to be nav btn. Okay, right, now these are going to have some icons. Okay, so let's go ahead and then install React icons real quick. So npm install React icon or React icons. Okay, that's done. We've installed React icons. So let's go ahead and then bring some icons in here. I'm going to bring in these icons. So FA bars, this, and this. Okay, so these icons should be imported. Go ahead and bring in these icons as well. And for the first one, that's the theme button. That's going to be go moon, and there's going to be FA bars, right? So we save this, we come back to our project, and this is what we have. Perfect. All right, so for now, this is all we need for our navbar. Okay, so we can go ahead and install this, and then you come back to make this responsive. Right, so let's go to our navbar css module, and let's give this navbar some styling. All right, let's go ahead and target our nav class, and let's give that a width of 100 viewport width, and the height is going to be 4 rem. So 16 times 4, that should give you the number in pixels. Let's give it a background of transparent. Let's give it a backdrop filter of blur 20 pixels. Let's give it a border bottom of 1 pixel solid, and color gray 200. That's a variable in the root variables. That's in the global CSS, right? We are going to display grid and place items to the center. Let's position this to be fixed, and from the top is going to be 0, and it's going to be 0 from the left as well. Let's give it a z index of 10 so that it sits on top of everything on the page. Perfect. So this is what we have. Nothing really has changed visually, but everything is working. So the nav container, we are going to display that to be flex, place items to the center, and justify content to be space between. And now we have this. Let me position this relative. Okay, you are going to understand this in a minute. And let's go ahead and grab the nav logo, this right here. Let's grab that and give it a font size of 1.2 rem. Give it a font weight of 900, and a color primary. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and grab the nav items right here. That's the nav items, and display that to be flex. As you can see, it is flex, and I'm going to align items to the center and give a gap of 3.5 rem between the elements. Now let's target the buttons, and I'm going to display that to be flex, align items to the center, and give a gap of 1. Oh, let me do 2.5 rem. Okay, right here. That's the div that wraps around these buttons, right? Now I'm going to have a style here, and that is going to be for a particular link. Okay, so when we get to, or when we come to the services page, for instance, you can see the link that corresponds to that page is styled differently. Okay, so we give it the color primary, which is this reddish color. When we come to the portfolio page, same thing happens for the link that corresponds to that page, contact page as well, about, and then home. All right, so what we are going to do is to have that style, and then later on in the JSX file, we can have that functionality so that we can just add the class and then everything will start working. Right, so for every link that has a class, let's target the nav items first, and then every link that has a class of active, we should give that a color of color primary. Right, so of course that's not going to do anything on the page right now, but it's good that we have it. And then let's target the individual buttons inside of the nav BTNs, the cursor of pointer, so that it looks clickable. Let's give them a font size of 1.3 rem, and also let's give them a color, a text color of color gray 900. It should be button, right? Okay, so we have that. All right, now this beggar icon is not going to be needed on larger devices. We're only going to need it on small screens. Actually, let me remove the background for all the buttons and make it transparent. Since we are going to need this only on small screens, let's go ahead and then display that to be none, and we gave that a class of nav btn. Right, let's check right here, and we are going to display that to be none. Yeah, that should be it. Okay, so now this is all we need for our nav bar. All right, so let's go ahead and then add the media queries to make this responsive. Let's go ahead, and as you can see, this is not responsive right now, so let's go ahead and then make it responsive. Let's proceed, and this media query is for 600 pixels devices and below. Okay, so every device below screen width or the browser width of 600 pixels is going to have these styles that we are going to put in here. Right, so first of all, I'm going to target the nav items. That's the unadded list, and we displayed that flex already, if you can remember. Right here, the display is flex. Just change the flex direction to be column. The gap is going to be zeroed out. Position is going to be absolute. Come on, absolute. I'm going to give it a top of 3 rem, a right of 0, and for us to know what is happening, I'm going to give it a background of red for now. Okay, so this is our nav items. Now let's proceed and then target the LIs inside of that. I'm going to give that a box shadow of -2 rem, 4 rem. So -2 rem for the x-axis, 4 rem for the y-axis, 3 rem for the blur, and an RGBA of black with 20% opacity or alpha. Right now, I'm going to target the links itself. So nav items, and then the links inside of that. Let me save this. Actually, I'm going to remove the red background. All right, now let's give this a padding 1.3 rem for the top and bottom, and then 4.5 rem for the left and right. I'm going to display this to be block and give it a background of color gray 0, which is white. And on hover, let's grab the links inside of the nav items, and on hover we change the background to be color gray 200. And it seems we have a problem. So what I'm going to do is to target the list items and set a width of 100%. So it should be 100% of its parent width, right? We have it. And you know what? Let me make sure the link also have 100% of its. Yeah, perfect. All right. So the link also takes 100% of its parent, which is this one. And that is amazing. That is good. All right, so let's proceed, and this time we need the burger icon, okay, so that users can click to show and then hide the this drop down or this menu. All right, so let's target the nav btn and display that to be inline block. And now this is what we have. Okay, so we should be able to click to toggle this. Okay, so this should be able to show and hide, right? And to achieve that, we should go back to our nav.jsx so that we can have the functionality for that. To achieve our functionality, we are going to use some hooks. So first of all, we have to convert this to be client component, and down here we are going to have open and then set open to be equal to use state, and initially is going to be false. Initially our drop down is not going to be open, or our navbar is not going to be open, right? Now if our drop down is open, only then should we show on added list, right? So I'm going to wrap this just like that. And right now, if you come back, it shouldn't show because it is not open. Okay. Also, let's get down here to where the button is. Actually, let me call this nav open. So nav open, and this is going to be set nav open, right? And down here is going to be nav open. So here we are going to check if nav is open. So nav open. If so, then we are going to show the close icon right here. Otherwise, we should show the hamburger icon, if that makes sense. Let's have an on-click prop on this, and on click we want to set nav open to the opposite of the current state value. All right, so if we come back to our project and we click, we should be able to open and close our navbar. And one thing, we have to be able to, on click of any of these links, we have to close it. Okay, so for now, you can see we are on the services page, but immediately we come to the services page, this should be closed, right? So immediately we click on any of these links, we should be able to close it. So what we are going to do is to have a function here, close nav handler. And first, let's check if window.inner width is less or equal to 600 pixels. Remember, in our media queries, that's the value we are using. So 600 pixels and below is going to have these styles, right? So here too, 600 pixels and below should have these. So set nav open is going to be false whenever we click on any of the links, right? So here I'm going to have an on-click prop and close nav handler, and I hope that makes sense. And also on the logo, I'm going to have on-click prop as well, close nav handler. So anytime we click our logo to come home, we close our navbar. That's if you are on a device with a width of 600 pixels or below, right? And I hope this makes sense, guys. All right, and I think that is all. Let's see. Let's come back here. So now, if I click services, I come to the services page. We go to our about, we have it, and it works like that. All right, now let's add the drop functionality or the drop animation that we had in the finished project right here. Right, so we have this drop animation, let's go on and then add that real quick. But before we even do that, let's go ahead and whenever we come to any of the pages, we should be able to highlight the link that corresponds to that page, right? So that is very easy. Let's make sure you bring in use path name from Next navigation. And down here, we are going to, let me have a comment here. Path name is going to be equal to use path name. And we are going to just check to see if the path name corresponds to the link that we are currently at, right? And that is going to be here. Let's give this a class name and check if path name is equal to the link. And the link is from this array, okay? You know, each of the link tags has a link coming from here, okay? So there's the home page, the about, services, portfolio, and then contacts, okay? So if the path name, and the path name is this right here that we have, right? If it corresponds to the current one that we are iterating on, we are going to add an active class. If it doesn't, then it's going to be an empty class. Okay, so the active class, we already have it right here, as you can see, and that's the color primary. And if it corresponds, then we will just have that class. Okay, so this should work immediately. Right now we are on the services page. If you go to the about, you can see we have the about. If you go home, the home link is highlighted. If you come to the portfolio, same thing. Contact, same thing. All right, so now we can go ahead and then add the drop down functionality. All right, so to achieve that, what I'm going to do is to have a keyframe, and it's going to go to a transform of rotate x 0, right, and an opacity of 1. Okay, so this is the end state of the animation, and we are going to put it on the li, or the list item. Okay, so let me give this the animation that we just, or the keyframe that we just created. That's the name of the keyframe right here. 200 milliseconds of duration is in function of ease and forwards. So this basically means the look of the animation should be whatever we have in the end state. I hope that makes sense. All right, so let's give it a transform of rotate x of 90 degrees. That's the initial state, and opacity of 0 degrees. Now the transform origin is going to be from the top, right? So initially it's going to be 90 degrees on the x-axis and opacity of 0, but at the end the elements are going to end with this style. That's the rotate of 0 degrees on the x-axis and then opacity of 0. Oh, identifier, right? So now let me refresh this and click, and this is what we have. Not too bad, but you know what, I'm going to target the parent of the element that we are animating. I'm going to give that a perspective of 130 pixels. So now we have a better feel of the animation, right? Now it looks 3D-ish, but now I want to put some delay on the elements that we are animating, and that's the li. I'm going to target them individually and put some delays on them. And as I said, for us not to waste too much time, we are not going to be writing all the CSS, right? The rest I'm going to just paste and maybe explain, or we just paste them, right? So animation delay, and this is going to be 100 milliseconds. I'm going to copy it for the remaining elements. So second, third, fourth, fifth. This is going to be 200 milliseconds. We have 300 and then 400 milliseconds. All right, so we save, come back to our project, and now we have a fluid, cool drop down animation. Okay, I hope this makes sense, guys. And I have a dedicated video using HTML and CSS on how to create animations like this. So especially drop down animations, so you can check that out. I may leave a link in the description. All right, so now this is all we need for, wait a minute. And as you can see, when we come back to large devices or any screen size more than 600 pixels, we have a problem. We can't see the nav items, right? So what we are going to do is to have a function here. Actually, let's put this inside a use effect and have a function and check if window inner width is greater than 600 pixels. Okay, if so, then we know we are on large device and we are going to set nav open to be true. Right, now let's have a dependency array in here, and that's going to depend on the nav open. All right, I hope that makes sense, right? So when we come back to our project, now we should have our nav menu. Perfect. All right, so now everything is working just like expected. Okay, so on mobile devices, we have this. And on large devices, this is what we have. Perfect. All right, so now let's move on to the next section of the home page, and that's going to be the header section or the hero section. Okay, so right here in our components, let's have a header folder, and inside it let's have header.jsx, and of course we are going to have header.module.css file for that as well. Let's import the CSS file. This is going to be pretty simple. RAFCE, and we have this. Let me actually put this inside a header tag and give it a class name of styles. Actually, you know what? Let me put the container class on this and have a class of styles.header particular to this header tag. You're going to have a left side and a right side. The left side is going to have some text content and a call to action or two call to action buttons, and the right side is going to have that cool image effect, right? So let's just have a div right now and give it a class of styles header left. I'm going to duplicate this for the header right. Okay, now for the header left, we are going to have an h1. We have a paragraph below that, and let's just do lorem 13. That should be enough. And below the paragraph, we are going to have the call to action buttons. Let's have a div with a class of styles dot header cta or call to action, which is going to have two links. The first one is going to be our portfolio. So let's say project, and the href is going to go to /portfolio. And I'm going to duplicate this. Let me actually give this a class of btn, which is coming from the global css right here. Remember we had a btn class. Okay, so these are the styles that are going to take effect. Let me close the navbar. Okay, so we gave it a class of btn, and the second one is going to go to the contact. So let's just say hire me or contact me, whatever you want to write. But this one, I'm going to have another class of primary. Okay, so we save this, come back to our project, and nothing is really showing because we are not rendering the header component anywhere. Okay, so let's come back to our home page right here. That's the direct page file inside of the app. Let me have a React fragment. We are going to have our header. So now if we come back to our project, we have our header section. Okay, so that's all for the left side. Now for the right side, we are going to have the images, and let me quickly show you how I achieved this. Okay, so I used Photoshop. I have a file here, Photoshop file with 960 pixels of width and then 1080 pixels of height, right? So you can have the same dimensions as I have here, or you can have your own dimensions. It doesn't really matter. But what I did was I had two rulers, one for the vertical, which splits the image in half, and another that splits the image this way. Okay, so as you can see, we have 4 parts already, right? So I just grab this two right here, and then you know what? Let me remove this. I'm going to delete all these, delete layers. Yeah, so I just copy this side. This is the top left side, right? And then do Control J, and as you can see, that part is copied right here. And make sure this is selected, the original image, so that when you do the Control J, it copies the part that you've selected, okay, in the canvas. All right, so this time this is going to be the top right. So I'll just do Control J, making sure I have this selected. And as you can see, I have the top right. I'm going to do same. I'll select this, that's the original image, and select the part that I want to duplicate. Do Control J again, that part is duplicated, and I'll do same for the bottom left. So now I'm going to go ahead and then name the duplicate. I have bottom left, this is going to be bottom right. I have bottom, no, there's going to be top right, and then lastly top left. So now that I have all these, what I'm going to do is to select and then export, right? So I'm going to export this, and you can go ahead and just export it, okay, as a PNG file. So you export this part, that's going to be the top left. You export it, it's going to be saved as a PNG image. You come back, you export this one, and then that one. And at the end, you should have images like this. Okay, so there's what I have. Okay, so the bottom left, the bottom right, and then the top left, and then the top right. Okay, so that's how I was able to achieve that. Now if you come back to the original project, you can see that I'm going to refresh this. You can see that these are the parts. We have the top left, the top right, the bottom right, and then the bottom left. Now for the border radius, we are going to use CSS to achieve that, so don't worry about that. But for you to achieve the individual splits, that's how I was able to achieve it in the Photoshop, as I just showed you. All right, so let's come back to the project. And first of all, I'm going to bring in image from next/image. We're not going to use the img tag, so let's import. I'm going to give this a class of styles.card1, or you can name it image1, it doesn't really matter. And let's have our first image. That's going to be a self-closing tag. So let's bring in the images real quick. Let's import image1 from, let's go into our assets. We're going to get the top left first, duplicate this 3 times. We are going to have the top right. We are going to have the bottom left, and lastly the bottom right. Okay, so the bottom left is going to be the third image, and the bottom right is going to be the last image, which is image 4. So we have that. Down here, we are just going to put that as the source. So image 1, and you should make sure you have alt. Okay, it can be empty. And I'm going to duplicate this card 3 times. And you know what? Let me actually put this inside an article tag. Okay. All right. So image 1, image 2, image 3, and lastly image 4. We should make sure the classes are changed as well. Right. So we save this, come back to our project, and now we have this. Okay. So perfect. That's what we have. And that's all we need for the JSX. So we should go ahead and install this real quick. Let's get the header itself. Did I give it a class? Wait a minute. Yeah, I gave it a class of header. So let's target that and give it a height of 100 viewport height, display of grid. And I'm going to give it a grid template columns of 5 FR and then 4 FR. Give it a gap of 7 rem. And I'm going to align items to the center. So we save, and this is what we have. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is to grab the header left, and let me grab the paragraph directly. Give it a margin of 0.8 rem for the top, 0 for the left and right, and then 2.5 rem for the bottom. Let me actually give it a font size. I'm going to make it a little bigger, of 1.1 rem right here. And I'm going to target the header CTA. That's the div that wraps around these two links. And I'm going to display that to be flex and give it a gap of 1.2 rem. Now let me get the header right, which basically has the image, and I'm going to display that to be grid. And the grid template columns is going to be 1 FR, 1 FR. So now if we save, this is what we have. Okay, so if you had a perfect split, okay, if we were able to divide or select this very well, then we are going to have this perfect looking image. Okay, it doesn't look splitted, but if I should give this a gap right now, let's say a gap of 4 pixels or 5 pixels, you can see that these are separate images, right? So if you did a good job, of course it should look like a single image. But now we are going to go ahead and then target each individual card or each individual image. Remember, each of the images is inside an article tag with a class of card 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, sorry, no 5. It's only 4 images. So let's target the first one, card 1. And I want that butterfly effect. If you don't want it, of course, you shouldn't bother using the border radius. But I'm going to give it a border radius of 0 and then 5 rem. And for this to work, I'm going to give it an overflow of heading. Okay, so that's the first one. That's what we have. I'm going to duplicate this a few times or 3 times. So 2, 3, and then 4. And the second one is going to, let me save this real quick. The second one should be the opposite, so 5 rem and then 0. The third one should be the same, 5 rem and then 0. And the fourth one should be, or should have the same style as the first one. So this is what we have. Okay, this is what we have for our image. Now I'm going to create a keyframe here so that we can have that animating effect. That's if you want it. Okay, if you want this animation, of course, then follow along and then have the keyframe. I'm going to leave it as identifier. That's the name of the keyframe. And at 0%, we are going to have a filter of saturate, which is going to be 1. Okay, so it's going to be the default saturation of the image. The opacity is going to be 1. That means the image is going to show clearly, and the blur is going to be 0. That means there's not going to be any blur. All right, so now at 20%, the filter, actually, you know what, let me just duplicate this, right? I'm going to duplicate this 3 times. So we are going to have 20%, 50%, and 100%. So at 20%, let me go back to the project. At 20%, I want the saturation to be 0, the opacity to be 1, and the blur to still be 0. At 50%, I want the saturation to be 0, the opacity to be 0 as well. So basically the image is going to vanish, or is going to dissolve, and the blur is going to still be 0. And lastly, actually, you know what? Do I need the blur? I don't think I do. Okay, I think I used the blur here. Yeah, I did. So I'm going to keep it. So the blur in this case is going to be 5 pixels, or you can make it even 10 pixels. All right. And lastly, for the 100%, we are going to go back to the initial. Okay, so it's going to be saturate 1, opacity 1, and then blur 0. So if we save this and then put this on the cards, so animation is going to be the identifier, is going to be the keyframe that we just created. The duration is going to be 10 seconds. The timer function is going to be linear. This is going to alternate, and I've forgotten the name of this. It's going to be infinite. Okay, so just like we had forwards for one of our keyframes, this is going to be infinite, and that means it should go on forever, right? So that's basically what we have. So that's for card 1, and as you can see, the card 1 is animating. I'm going to put this on card 2 and just change the duration to 20 seconds, and I'm going to do the same for card 3, and I'll change the duration to about 25 seconds. And lastly, for the card 4, it's going to be 20 seconds. Actually, let me make that 15. Okay, so I save this, come back to our project. So we are basically done with the header section, or this hero section, and you can notice that this button, the projects button, isn't really standing out from the background, and that's because in the final project, or in the finished project, we have a texture for it. Okay, and we're actually going to add the texture getting to the end of this video when we are dealing with the theme functionality. Okay, but for now, let's just forget about it. And then proceed to make this responsive, or make it look good on mobile phones. And as you can see right now, this hero section doesn't look good on mobile phones or on small devices. So what we are going to do, and for us not to waste any more time, I'm just going to paste the media queries for the header section. Okay, so that's very simple. You know about this, and that's all you need to make this responsive on small screens. So now we come back, and this is what we have. Okay, perfect. So now let's move on to the next section of the page. I'm going to refresh this, and this is going to be this services section right here. Very simple. Let's move on to that. I'm going to close these header files, and then move on to, I'm going to create a new component, call it services. Actually, yeah, let me create a folder first, and then create a file called services section.jsx. I'm going to create another file, services.module.css. All right, so in the services section, let's do RAFCE. You know what, I'm going to change this file name to be services. Okay, although we have services page, this is a component. Okay, so there is a big difference. All right, now, yeah, let's proceed. And I'm going to paste some imports. Of course, we import the CSS file, and this is going to be services. And I'm going to change this to services, right? So in here in the return, we are going to have a section and give it a class name of styles.services. And I'm going to go ahead and have a div. I'm going to use the backticks and then have our general container class and also styles.services. Let me do services wrapper, or you can do services container. It doesn't really matter here. Okay, and in here we are going to have our individual services now. So in here you can see that each of these are links. Okay, and on click of them we are taken to the services page. So basically it doesn't do anything that much, but it just takes your client to the services page so that he or she can read more about the different services you offer. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll have our link. Let's have an href, and this is going to go to services page. I'm going to use the backticks again, btn, and then styles.service. Okay, so inside of, or in between the link tag, we're going to have a span, give it a class name of styles.icon, and this icon is going to be the design icon right here. I'm going to copy it and then paste it in here. Okay, below that we are going to have an age 6, a heading 6, give it a class name, styles.title, and this is going to say UI UX. Okay, so that's for one service. You're going to just duplicate this. Of course, you could have an array and then look through it, but I'll just leave it like this. Okay, all the links are going to take us to the services page, so we don't have to change the href. And okay, so for the text here, we have to change it to front end, and that's going to be the FA code icon. This is going to be the FA server icon, and this is going to say backend. And lastly, we're going to have full stack, and this is going to be laptop code. Okay, these are all imported right here. All right, so that is all for that section. Here too, I'm not going to waste too much time on the CSS, so let me just paste it. And we first grab our services wrapper, and right here, that is the div that wraps the links, the individual links, right? So we target that, we give it a display alignment and all of that. We target the individual links, and we give them a class of service. As you can see, where is it? Right here. Okay, so each of the links have a service class. We style that, we target the icon, which is the span, and we start that as well, and then we have a simple media query. So that's all for the CSS for the services section. And now if we save and then come back to our project right here, of course we are not rendering that, so let's come back to our page, which is the main page or the home page, and then render our services section. And next, let's make sure that is imported. So services from components and then services. Okay, so we save this, come back to our project. Yep, so now this is working, and it seems our color, and I'm going to correct that real quick. Okay, I'm going to remove this, and then this should be styles dot icon. It shouldn't be a string like we had before, right? It should be, since we are using CSS modules, it should be like that. Okay, so my bad. Now let's proceed and then check this out, and this is what we have. Okay, and wait a minute. Yeah, so this what we have for our services section. Very simple. And of course we should check the media queries, right? Everything is looking clean. You know what, let me have the texture background. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead into my layout right here, and in the body I'm going to cut everything inside of it and then wrap them inside of a main tag. Wait a minute, what's wrong? Okay, so in our main tag we're going to have what we just cut. Okay, so the navbar and the footer, everything is going to be wrapped inside of this main tag. Okay, so let me close this. So now when we come to the global CSS, so as you can see we have some styles for our main tag, and on that we have some background which is a little bit darker than the current background, which is pure white. We don't want that. And as you can see we have a texture which is an image in the assets, right? So now when we come back to our project, you can see that this button stands out, and then these also stand out. Okay, so let's move on to the next section, which is going to be the testimonial section. I'm going to close this and then create. First, let's have testimonials folder and testimonials.jsx file. I'm going to do RAFCE. We should have it, and of course we should make sure this imported in our page, our main page. Testimonials, we save that, come back, and we should have, wait a minute, of course we should import that. Let's import, let me just duplicate this one, and that's going to be inside the testimonials folder, and then we get the testimonials.jsx. Services is not defined really. Yeah, testimonials. All right, so we save, come back, and now we should have our testimonial section right here that we are going to work on. Make this simple for us. Testimonial section, we are going to use a library called SwiperJS. So let's quickly set that, or you can go to SwiperJS/React. Okay, this URL, and you know what, I'll come back to this, but basically I'm going to have some styles in the global CSS, okay, because we don't want a CSS module to alterate the classes that we give to the elements that we have here, right? So let's go ahead and then have a section here. I'm going to give it a class of styles.section. Let's have an h2 here that says testimonials. Let's have a paragraph, and let's say check out what my clients say. Okay, that's the paragraph. And let's go on and see how we are going to use the SwiperJS. Okay, so as I said, come to this website, swiperjs.com/react. And if we scroll down, so basically everything is going to be wrapped inside a swiper component, right? And inside that, we are going to have the individual slides. So what I'm going to do is to copy the things that we need. I'm going to copy the top, import, and then paste it here. The only thing we need here is the pagination, so I'm going to delete the rest, come back, and then I'm going to copy this. Actually, I'm going to copy this and then come back and paste. And we don't need the navigation. By the way, you should make sure the CSS file is imported. That's our custom CSS file, and I don't think I even created that. So let's create our testimonials.css, sorry, the module.css file, and make sure that is imported in here. Although we are going to have some styles in the global CSS which are going to be specific to the SwiperJS, we just have to have our own CSS file so that we can style the rest of the elements that is not really related to the SwiperJS library. Okay, so let's import our CSS module file, and let's come back. And what we are going to copy again is, let's see. Let me copy everything here and then come back, and I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, I'm going to remove all these. I only need one swiper slide since we are going to loop through. And also here, I don't need the navigation. All I need is the pagination. Okay, so I'm going to delete the rest. The slice per view is going to be 1, and I'm going to delete everything else except for the pagination. Okay, so I'm going to delete this as well, and even the scroll bar, I'm going to delete that. And below the swiper components, I'm going to have a div with a class of swiper pagination. And as you can see, I'm not using the CSS module to name this. Okay, it should make sure it is a global CSS name so that the swiper CSS file that we are importing can have effect on it. And of course, we should make sure swiper and the swiper slides are also imported. So right here, I'm going to import swiper and then swiper slide, swiper/react. And you know what? One big mistake that we are making right now is we don't even have SwiperJS installed. Okay, so let's go ahead and then install SwiperJS. Okay, so npm install swiper, just like that. So npm install swiper. So we have SwiperJS installed. Let's go ahead and then check our project real quick to see what we have. And we have a big error already. First of all, this component has to be a client component. So we are going to say use client, right? And also, of course, we only need pagination, not navigation. We are importing styles from the CSS module file. And lastly, this swiper pagination should be inside of the swiper component. Okay, so now if I save this and come back to our project, let's see what happens. Okay, swiper react. All right, so if I should duplicate this swiper slide and come back to our project, let's see, we have a working slide already. Okay, we have a slide already. So what we are going to do next is to just have our own content inside of this swiper slide. I'm going to go ahead and inside the testimonials folder, I'm going to create a new file called testimonials data.jsx, and then paste some data that we have, okay, an array that we have here. And as you can see, I'm importing some images from our assets right here. So we have avatar 1, 2, 3, and it goes on like that, right? I'm importing those, and we have a data array here that is being exported. Each object here has an ID, a name, an avatar, a profession, and the code. Okay, so we are just going to look through this, right? So let's come back to our testimonials.jsx and then import testimonials data. Okay, so down here, I'm going to copy, I'm going to cut this, and data.map. Let me go ahead and then destructure the ID, the name, the avatar, the profession, and the code. Once we have those, we are going to go ahead and return the swiper slide. Okay, and in between, actually, let me give this a key of ID, and also I'm going to give it a class name of styles.slide. In here, we are going to have a div and give it a class name of styles.avatar wrapper. Instead of that, we are going to have another div with a class styles.avatar. And inside of that, we are going to have our image. All right, so make sure you import that from next/image. I'm going to close that, and the source of that image is going to be the avatar that we structured right here. You should make sure you give it an alt. It can be empty, and below the avatar wrapper, we are going to have an h6 with a class of styles.name, and that's going to say the name. And we are going to have a small tag. Let's give it a class name of styles.job. And lastly, we are going to have the quotes or what the client said, and I'm going to give that a class name of styles.quote, right? So of course this should be the job or the profession rather, and this should be the quote. All right, so if we save this and then come back to our project, so now it is working. All right, so we have a working slide. Okay, so this is not too bad, but we have to make it look like a finished project. And this should be styles. Okay, styles the section, right? And to not waste too much time on this section, I'm just going to paste in the custom CSS that we are going to add. Right, so we target the section, we give it a margin top of 13. Let me comment that out so that you see how it's going to affect the page. Right here, there's no space between the previous section and this one. Okay, so that margin is going to solve that problem. It's going to push it down, right? So we have that. We target the avatar wrapper, where is the grandparent of the avatar itself, sorry, of the image right here. So we have a parent here, and then the avatar wrapper is the grandparent, right? I hope that makes sense. We target that, we give it this style. We target the avatar itself, where is the parent of the image tag. We target the name, the codes, and all that. And lastly, we have the media query. Very, very simple. All right, so we save this, come back to our project, and this is what we have. Okay, as I said earlier, we have some global styles here in the global.css. Okay, so if we scroll down to around here, you can see that we have some styles for our swiper, we have some styles for our swiper wrapper, and then our swiper slide, right? So we can go ahead and then even for the dark theme, I have some custom styles as well. Okay, so go ahead and then type this out. Yeah, so now we can proceed to the next section, which is going to be the frequently asked questions section. This is going to be inside of our components folder as well. All right, so let's create FAQs folder and then FAQs.jsx file. I'm going to do our FCE. This is going to be inside of a section tag. So section, let me give it a class of styles.section. Of course, we should have a CSS. So FAQs.module.css. Let's make sure that is imported in here. Let's have an H2. Let's have a paragraph tag. I'm going to have another file, and it's going to be FAQs data.js. And just like in the testimonial section, I'm going to have an array here. So right here we have a data array, and each object inside of it has an ID, title, and description. Let's bring that in and then map through it. So let's import data from alright, so data.map. Let's get the ID, the title, and the description, and we are going to return a FAQ item component, which we don't have yet. We should give this a key. Let's give it a title of the title, and lastly let's give it a description. I'm going to shorten it, and that's going to be the description coming in. Okay, but first we should make sure the FAQ item file is created. All right, so we have that. So now if we come back to our project, of course we should make sure we have it in our and make sure you import it as well. So now if we come back, interesting. Okay, we don't have our CSS file. Interesting. So let's import our CSS file. You know what? I'm going to cut this. Let's have a div here. Give it a class. We're going to use the backticks. So we're going to have the general container class and another class of styles.container. And inside the container, we're going to paste what we did before. So we get the data and then we loop through it. So data.map, we loop through, and of course we should make sure FAQ item is imported. Okay, so let's import FAQ item, and now we have this. All right, so let's work on the FAQ item real quick. First of all, we are going to bring in the description, and in here we are going to have an article tag. Let's actually give this class. We're going to use the backticks. So the class is going to be styles.faq, and inside that we are going to have a div with no class, and inside that div we are going to have a span, and that span is going to have an icon. Okay, so let's import two icons here. So we'll have an icon here, and below the span we are going to have an age 6. We're going to say the title, and lastly below the div we are going to have a paragraph tag that will have the description or the answer to the question. Okay, you can call this answer right from the data so that you can be consistent and call the description answer instead of the description, if that makes more sense to you. All right, so if we save this and come back, what is happening here? All right, let's make sure we import the CSS module here as well. Right, we still have an error. Interesting. What is happening? Okay, I didn't call it description, I shortened it. Okay, so now everything should be working perfect. So we are getting the data, and now we should go ahead and add the CSS for the frequently asked questions section. And once again, this shouldn't take too much of our time. So we target the section, we style it, give it a margin top so that we have enough space up here. As you can see, let me make this smaller. Right, so we have enough space right now. We target the container, we give it a grade and all of that. We target the frequently asked question section itself right here, and we have the style. That's if we open or if we click to open it just like this, then we are going to have a different style for it. Okay, so the background is going to be color primary and the text is going to be white, just like we have in the finished project, right? So once we click, we change the color or the style of it. All right, so down here we have some style for our age 6 and the div that wraps around the icon and the age 6 as well. There's the style for it. Why did I target the age 6 twice? Okay, so this is for open, right? When we open it, we target the age 6 and then we give it some style. I think that is it. Okay, and we have some media queries right here. Very simple. Okay, so what we are going to do next is to make sure this is functional so that users can click to toggle the description or the answer for any particular question or the answer for any particular question. All right, so let's save this. We're going to use state here, so we should make sure there is a client component. Let's have a state of open and set open for the state updating function. Use state, and this is going to be false initially. Okay, and here we are going to say the paragraph should only show if open is true. And right now, if we come back to our project, let's see what we have. They are not showing because now it is false. On click of any of the articles, so on click, I want to set open to be the opposite of the previous state. So open is going to be the opposite of the previous state. So now we should be able to show and hide the description or the answer. Okay, very simple. All right, now I want the background to change once we open it. So here I'm going to check if open is true. If so, then we are going to add a class of open. Otherwise, and remember we had an open class here, right here. So if we save this and come back, did I save that? Let me check real quick. Okay, so if I save this, come back to our project, and I think we have a problem. Of course, this should be styles.open. All right, so now it's working. Okay, now if we open it, we have to change the icon to be the minus icon. So here, I'm going to check if open is true. If so, then I'm going to show the minus. Otherwise, I'm going to show the plus. So I'm just going to change this to minus. Okay, so now I'll make sure I save it. Wait a minute, what's happening? If open is true, we show the minus. If not, we show the plus. Do I not have? Alright, let me refresh this. Okay, so now it is working. Okay, and that is all for this section. And I think we have the CSS, and it's going to be responsive on mobile phones as well, since we have the CSS for it. So if we scroll down, this is what we have. Okay, so now let's move on to the next section, which is the footer section, which is going to be very, very simple. I'm going to paste in some imports and make sure there's a client component, okay, because you're going to use a hook here. Right, so let's have this inside of the footer tag and give it a class of styles.footer. Inside that, we are going to have a container class. We are going to have a div with a class of container, then another class of styles.footer container. Inside that, we are going to have our logo. Now let's go back to our Navbar, and I'm going to grab some things from here. So we have our logo and the unadded list. Those are the two things I'm going to grab. Come back to my footer and paste it. I'm going to call this footer nav items. Here I'm going to have a small tag and give it a class name of styles.footer copyright, and this is going to say the copyright sign 2024 EGATOR tutorials, all rights reserved, all rights reserved. Path name be equal to use path name. I'm going to call this footer logo. We don't need this, so I'm going to remove that. We don't need this here as well. So save, come back. We don't need this here as well. So we save, come back to our project, and now we should have our footer. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the CSS for this as well. And I'm just going to paste it. It's very simple. Let's check this out, and we have it. Okay, we have a beautiful footer right here. Now let's look through the CSS, and we have a backdrop filter and all that. We target our footer container, we target the logo, the nav items. These are very simple, right? And lastly, we have some media query so that this looks good on mobile phones. So if we come back and then check, this should look perfect on mobile phones, and as you can see, it does, right? So that is all for the home page. That is all for the home page of this website, right? So the next page we are going to work on is going to be the about. So let's move on to that. And before we move on to the other pages, I want to have a component for the headings. Okay, so apart from the home page, you can see that we have this heading for the rest of the pages. Okay, so I want to go ahead and then make that a component so that we can reuse it in the other pages or in the other components as well. All right, so let's create a folder here called section header, and I'm going to create section header.jsx file inside of it. Let's do ifce, and also I'm going to create its own, so section header.module.css. all right, let's make sure that is imported here. All right, so we have that, a header tag, and inside of that, actually let me give it a class of styles.section header, or I could do styles.header, right? But that's okay. Let's have an h3 here. That will be the title, which will be coming in as a prop, and a paragraph tag as well, and that will be the subtitle, which will be coming in as a prop as well. So let's go ahead and then structure the title and the subtitle. Okay, and that's what we need here. That's all we need right here. So let's go ahead and paste the CSS for this. So we target the section header, we give it a margin padding and all that. We target the h3, which is the title. We target the, did I give those classes? Yeah. We target the paragraph, and lastly we have some media query. Okay, so this is what we need, and we can move on to the about. Let me close the component folder and move into the about page. All right, let's have a section. Let's have our section header. Okay, the title prop and the subtitle prop. Right now, if I should come to our about page right here, right, we have it. Okay, so we have about me, and then who I am and what I do. Perfect. Let's see. Let's forget about this for now. Let's refresh it. Good. So now let's proceed, and below the section header we are going to have a container class. So a div, class name, we are going to have the general container class, and styles.container class. Okay, inside of the container we are going to have two article tags. The first one is going to have a class name of, and that's going to have our image. Okay, so let's import image from next image. The source is going to be, let's bring in the image, right? So I'm going to go ahead and then bring in I'm going to call this about image, which will be coming from our assets, and about.jpg. That's the image I want. So this is going to be the source, and let's give it an alt. it could be an empty string, but I'm going to say about image. Now a sibling of the article tag is going to be another article tag, and let's give this a class name of styles.about content, and this is going to have an h4 that says my name is Ernest and I'm a developer. All right, below that we are going to have some paragraphs, so let's do lorem 20 or maybe lorem 30 for the first paragraph. We have another paragraph, let's do lorem 20, and lastly we'll have another one with lorem 40. Okay, so we save, come back to our project, and this is what we have. Not too bad. And below the paragraphs we are going to have a link, and that is going to the assets, and we are going to grab the CV. Okay, now I'm going to give this a class name of btn primary, and also a specific class of about ctd. I want it to be downloadable, and the rel is going to be, and we are going to say download cv. All right, so we save this, come back to our project, and this is what we have. Nice. All right, now do we have the css? Yeah, we do. So I'm just going to go ahead and then paste the css for the about page. So we save, and nothing happens. About, do I not have that file? I do. About the module.css. Interesting. Okay, let's go in here, and I call this image, and called this about container. Right, so we save, and we still have issues. Okay, I call it container, not about container. Yep, so that is what we have. Perfect. Now since we have the media queries right here, this should look good on mobile phones as well, and it doesn't. Of course, this should be container. Yeah, so now everything works, everything is looking amazing. Okay, so that's all for the about page. Now let's move on to the next page, which is going to be the services page. And before we work on the services page, I'm going to create a component right here in our components folder, and that's going to be a card component. So let's create a card folder and card.jsx file. Our FCE, we should have a CSS module for this as well, card.module.css. And right here we are going to have an article tag, and inside of that we are going to just have our children. Okay, let's make sure we structure that, and even class name as well, in case we add another class to the card component when we are using it. Let's give this a class name of styles.card, and another class name of class name, in case we add any class to it later on. Okay, so that's all we need. And for the CSS, Now let's get into the card CSS and then paste this. So this is all we need for the card component, right? It's going to be a reusable component. Children, did I spell that? Yeah. It's going to be a reusable component, right? If you come to the services page, you can see we use that. And on the portfolio page, that's what I used here as well. Okay, so let's get back to the services page and work on this right here. So I'm going to close the card, JSX and CSS files. Right, so for the, what is it, services? I'll close these. So let's go to the services page right here. Wait a minute, what's happening? The services page right here. Okay, let's have a section with no class, and here let's have the section header component. Let's give it a title prop of services and a subtitle prop as well. Okay, below that we are going to have a div with a class of container. I'm going to bring in some data, so let's create services dot or services data.js, and I'm going to paste that right here. So I have some icons imported and I have an array here. Let me actually make this a named export, and I have some array here, and each object has an ID, an icon, a title, and a description, right? So let's go ahead and then import. Let me make sure this comes last, and I'm going to import data from services data right here. Okay, so I'm going to get a data array and then map through it, right? We can go ahead and then destructure the icon, the ID, the title, and the description. We'll return the card component, and inside the card component we are going to have, actually let me have a key, and that's going to be the ID. I'm going to add another class name, and that's going to be styles.service, and inside of that we are going to have, that's going to be the icon. Let's have an h5, that's going to be the title, and lastly a paragraph, which is going to be the description. All right, so we save this, come back to our project, and this is what we have. Perfect. Okay, and as you can see we have a cool hover effect, and that is coming from the card. Let me show you real quick. The card component had a hover effect like that right here. Okay, so that is it. Now let's add the CSS to the services page. I'm going to just paste it. Let's come back to our project, and this is what we have. Not too bad, I guess. Now I'm going to target this should be the container. Okay, you know what, let's come back here and let's have the general container class and another class of styles.container, right? So we save, come back, and this is what we have. Perfect, with a cool hover effect, right? And let me show you the CSS real quick, maybe you didn't see it. So we have our container and we have our service. So right here the container wraps around all the cards. Okay, so we have that right here with a grid, and each card has this style, we have the keyframe, and this keyframe is going to make sure we have a cool fading whenever we visit the page. Whenever we visit the page, we have a cool fading, just like that. Let me refresh so that you see it well. Let me refresh so that you see it well. As you can see, whenever we visit the page, we have a cool fading, and that's the keyframe right here. We have the icon. This is the style for the icon. We have the H5 and the paragraph as well. And lastly, we have the media query. So if we should check this on mobile phone, it should look perfect. Okay, so I'll go to the about, come back to the services, and you see the fading. And we had the same fading for the about. I don't know if I showed you the code for the about section. We still had that. We have that same fading right here. So we target the image and then we had that. Okay, perfect. So that's all for the services. The contact page is very simple, so I'm just going to paste it, okay, so that I explain what is happening here. So as you can see, we have some imports here. We have the CSS file imported last. Of course, we have some icons and we have the section header as well. So in the return, we have a section, and a chart of that is the section header with the title and the subtitle. We have a div that wraps around the different links that we have, and the first link will open Gmail on the user's phone, okay, so that they can directly message you. The recipient field or the send to field of that email is going to be automatically populated, and so you should make sure your email is this right here. Okay, so in this case, that is damiegator@gmail.com. This should be your email, right? So mail to, and then your email comes. Okay, so that's for the first link. The second one is Facebook Messenger right here. So this should be your Facebook ID. Right, so you go to your Facebook profile and then you copy the ID and then you paste it right here, and this should also work. Okay, the last one is for WhatsApp, and with that you just paste your country code and then the number right here. You just put it right here and everything should work fine. Okay, so nothing too complicated here. Let's go ahead and then add the styling. Right here we get the contact wrapper, and then we have some styles. We display flex, inline, auto, and all that. Very simple. We have a keyframe just like we did for the about and the services page, and we have the links, the styles for the links, and then lastly we have some media query. So now let's come back and then refresh this and see what we get. Okay, so now we have this. All right, now let's go ahead and move on to the next page, which is actually the last page, and that's going to be the portfolio page, right? All right, here too, I'm going to have, okay, so I have the CSS file here. I'm going to have a data.js, and I have an array here that I'm going to paste. So we have some images here and the array. Now I'm going to make this a named export, so I can go down here and then delete the, I'm going to delete the default export. Right, so we have an array, and each object in the array has an ID, a category, an image, a title, a description, a demo link, so a link of the demo of the project, and then a GitHub link as well. Right, so this is the array we are going to loop through to show the project. Right, now as you can see, as I said, I have categories. So this first project has a category of UI UX. The second one is front end. We have front end for the third one as well. We have another UI UX. We have another one, and then front end, and lastly we have backend here. Okay, so only one backend project, about 4 front end projects, and then 3 UI UX projects, right? Keep this in mind. Okay, so back here, let's have a section, and it's not going to have any class. Let's have our section header, give it a title prop, and it's going to say my project. Let's give it a subtitle. I'm going to go ahead and then bring in the array. So let's import data from data.js. Okay, that's our array right there. We're going to call this projects and set project. Come on. It's going to be equal to useState, and we're going to pass in the data array. Now let's go ahead and then get the categories that we have. Okay, the different categories that we have for the project, right? So const categories is going to be equal to data.map. We're going to call each one item, and then we will return item.category to get all the categories that we have in the array. Okay, now if I should console.log categories, let's see what we get. Okay, so let's come back to our portfolio page and let's see what we get in the console. Okay, so we have UI UX front end, UI UX front end, and then back end, right? We don't want this. Okay, so we are going to get only the unique categories. Okay, so to achieve that, let's go ahead, and I'm not going to remove this console log. Let's go ahead and say unique categories is equal to, first we have all. We want to be able to click an all button so that we show all the projects, but we are going to go ahead and then create a new set from the categories array that we got right here. Okay, so we are creating a new set, and basically that is going to return only the unique values in that array. All right, so we save this and then we log the unique categories in the console, and let's see what we get. We get only 4 items in the array now, including the all. Okay, so we get UI UX, front end, and then back end. Of course, you can go ahead and then add full stack if you want, but I think this is enough. Category buttons. Okay, the buttons we are going to need to filter the projects. But before we even work on the category buttons, I want to have a function here that filters the projects, okay, which we are going to pass as a prop to our category buttons components that we just created, right? So actually, let me do RAFCE here for now. And back in the page, we are going to have a function. So let's call this filter projects handler. And that's going to be an arrow function. And it will take in the category that we are trying to filter, right? And here we are going to check if the category is equal to all. Okay, if so, then we want to return the array here. Okay, the original array. If so, then that's what we want to return, right? So we are going to set projects to data, which is the original array, and then return. I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, we are going to filter using the category given, and so that's going to be, let's call this filter or filtered project, and that's going to be equal to data.filter, which is a function or a method, and for each iteration we want to return any project with the category equal to the category we just passed in. Okay, and I hope that makes sense. And right after that, we are going to go ahead and set projects to be the new filtered projects right here. Okay, let me add a comment here with the class of container, and inside is where we are going to have our category buttons. Okay, we are going to pass the categories as a prop, and that's going to be equal to the unique categories that we got. I hope you remember right here. Okay, so the unique categories, that's what we are passing in. And also we are going to pass in on filter projects prop, and that's going to be the function that we just created, which is filter projects handler, right? So this, perfect. So now we can get back to our category buttons. Right here, let's have a use state called, or a state value called active category. Okay, and then set active category, come on, right? It's going to be equal to use state, and initially it's going to be all. Okay, that's going to be the initial value, right? So basically we are going to show all the projects initially, and since we are using a hook here, we should make sure there's a client component. So we are going to say use client, and down here let's create a function, okay, that is going to change the categories, right? So let's call this change category handler, which is going to be equal to an arrow function, and it's going to take the active category, and we are going to set active category to be the active cat that we are taking it right here. Okay, and then we set on filter project, which is a prop that we should accept here. So we should take in the categories, and then on filter projects prop, which is passed in here, right? If you can remember, there's it, and we are accepting that, and then here we are going to pass in the active category. Simple as that. So here we are going to return a div with a class name categories, and in between the div we are going to look through our categories array that we passed in right here. Okay, so we say categories dot map, and for each category we are going to return a button with a key of the category, since it is going to be unique, right? Let's give it a class name of btn and styles.cat btn. Also, let's check if the active category is equal to the category that we are taking in. If so, then we should change the style of that link or of that button. Okay, and in this case we are just going to add the primary class to give it that primary color. Otherwise we just have an empty class. Okay, and I hope that makes sense. Lastly, we are going to have an on click prop. So on click we want to run a function change category handler, which we have here, and it's going to take in the category, right? And that is it. Now in between the opening and the closing button we are going to pass in the category. I hope this makes sense. Okay, so we save this, come back to our project. Let me refresh this, and we have an error. Styles is not defined. That's because we don't have our CSS file. All right, so we save this, come back, and we have it. Okay, so as you can see, we can click, and what we click is the active category button. Okay, perfect. So now let's move on to the actual project. So let's have a component for that. So inside our projects folder, let's create another file, project.jsx rfce. All right, so I can go to the page, that's the project's page itself, and then render our project component right away. And this is going to take in the projects, which is going to be equal to right here. Okay, which is the array that we imported, right? So now let's get back to the projects.jsx, and we are going to return a div with a class, and inside of this we are going to loop through our projects array, right? So let's bring that in. Let's destructure that, map through that. For each one I'm going to call it project, and we are going to return a card component. Okay, the card component we created earlier. Project.id. Okay, but you know what, let me actually destructure this. Okay, so let's get the, so we have id, category, image, title, description, demo, and then GitHub. So id, category, title, description, demo, GitHub. Is that all? Yeah, I think so. All right, so the key here is going to be the id. Let's actually give this a class. We bring in the, so in between the card we are going to have a div with a class name, so styles.image, and this is going to have our image for the project. The image that we destructured, we did not. Okay, so let me check that real quick. Yeah, so we should destructure the image, so id, image, category, and all that. Okay, so we have the image. Make sure we import the image tag as well, or the image components coming from next/image. We should give it an alt. It can be empty. And below the image, we are going to have another div with a class name, and that's going to be the title. We are going to have a paragraph, and that's going to be the description. We are going to have a div that wraps around our call to action buttons. So let's give it a class name of styles.cta, and inside that we are going to have our link. The first one is going to go to, all right, I'm going to duplicate this. Same as this, GitHub. It's just a text. It shouldn't be something to be evaluated. It should just be a text. All right, and we are having a problem here. Of course, we should go ahead and then add the CSS and see how there's going to be. Project. Now let's save this, come back. We should see some difference, and I don't think we added the, we should have a paragraph with a description. Wait a minute, let me check. Okay, yep, so right here, right, so now we save and come back and everything should be working. Okay, so we can go ahead and then filter. Of course, we have only one backend project. If we check the data, we have only one project with a category of backend. Okay, so let's start from the top. UI UX, front end, UI UX, front end again, front end, and then we have backend. So only one backend project, right? We can filter the front end, and we have 4 of them. We have 3 UI UX projects, and then we can click to show all the projects, right? Now let's see how that's going to look on mobile phones or smaller devices, and everything is looking amazing. Okay, everything is looking exactly as it should. All right, so let me show you real quick the CSS. I don't think I took the time to pause so that you can type it. Okay, so this is the CSS, this is the beginning of it. So you can pause the video and then type it out. All right, so that is it for the portfolio page, and I think we are done with all the pages. So the next thing we are going to do is work on the theme toggle functionality. Okay, so we should be able to switch from dark to light theme and then from light to dark theme as well. All right, so let's quickly move on to that. To achieve, let me close all these. I need the global CSS, so I'm going to open that again. We're going to do something in the layout as well. Yeah, those are enough for now. To achieve the theme functionality, that's the light and dark theme switch, we should have an upward state. Okay, so I'm going to create a context folder. We are going to use the context API, right? So let's have a folder called context, and we are going to have a file inside of that called theme context, okay, .js. And in here we are going to import create context and use state from React. Let's first create our context. So theme context is going to be equal to create context, and let's export theme provider, which is going to be equal to an arrow function where we are going to return theme context dot provider, and in between that we are going to have our children prop. Now let's have a state value here. I'm going to call that theme and I set theme, and initially it's going to be a light theme. Okay, let's pass that in to the provider as a value. So the value is going to be an object and it's going to have the theme state and then the set theme updating function as well. Okay, so that's all we need here. Of course, we should pass in the children prop, and we should be done here. Okay, right now let's go to our layout, and I'm going to have a component that wraps around the entire application. Okay, let's create that component right away, and I'm going to create that inside of or directly inside of our app, and that's going to be main.js, or let me actually name it main.jsx. Right, and in here we are going to return the main tag, give it a class of theme, which we should import. So let's bring in a theme context, and with that we can go ahead and then using the use context. Of course, we should pass in the context right here. So we are going to destructure the value that we passed right here. Okay, perfect. So that value is going to be the class. So if it is light, then we are going to depend on the class of the main to have a different theme. If it is dark, then we are going to check that using the class name of the main tag to have a different theme as well. Okay, so in the global CSS, if we come up top, you can see that here we have a main tag and a class of dark. Okay, so if it is dark, then these colors are what we are going to use. So basically you can see that color gray 0 is dark here. Okay, so black with a little bit of alpha. But in the light theme, which is the default theme, it is actually white. So we are basically switching dark themes or dark colors with light colors and then vice versa. I hope that makes sense. So the darkest color for the light theme, which is the default theme, is 111, which is almost black or very dark gray. But in here in the dark theme is going to be EEE, which is almost white, okay, or very light gray. And I hope that makes sense. So basically we have an upwise state and we have a tag, in this case the main tag, which wraps around all the elements on the page. So we use the class name of that element, which is the main element, to decide which theme to use. Okay, right. So we should of course pass in the children prop, since we are going to wrap this around the whole app. Of course we should pass in the prop here. That's the children prop. And I think that's it for this component. So in the layout, so in here, instead of this main tag, we are going to bring in the main component that we just created. Okay, and also we should wrap this whole thing, that's the main component here, we should wrap that with the theme provider, or you can even do it here if you want. And let me delete this. Perfect. All right, so let's bring in the theme provider and wrap it around the whole main tag. Okay, all right, so if we come back to our project and we have an error theme context, we are importing a component that needs create context. Interesting. It only works in the current component, but none of its parents are marked with use clients. All right, so oh sorry, this main component should be coming from the main component we just created. Okay, this one, that's what we want. That was an error. So we save, come back to our project, and now nothing is showing. But if I should go back to our context and then change this to right here, yeah, change this to dark, we save, we should now have a dark theme. Okay, so I hope everything makes sense now. We now have a dark theme, which is beautiful. All right, so now what I'm going to do is to add an on-click prop on this button or this icon here, so that on click of it we can switch to the opposite theme. Okay, so let me actually close all these and then come to inside of the components. We should go into the nav. Right away I'm going to destructure the two values, that's the theme and the set theme value from the context. Why did I even close that? So right here inside of the context we had a value of theme and then the set theme. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to bring those in here, right, and I'm going to go ahead and then the structure theme and a set theme from use context, and then we pass in the theme context that we brought. Okay, once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and then write a function to change the theme. Okay, so and let's call that change theme handler. So here I'm going to check if the theme or if the theme state is equal to light. If so, then we want to change it to the opposite, which is the dark theme. Otherwise, we want to set it to the light. Okay, very simple. All right, so on click of the button, let me add an on click prop. On click of the button, I want to call change theme, or is it change theme handler rather? So change theme handler, and that should be it. Okay, so let's go ahead and then try this real quick. Save, and yeah. Okay, so now if I click, we have a light theme. If I click again, we have a dark theme. So the toggle is working, but then I want this to be light. Okay, the default is going to be light, but we can of course click to switch to the other thing. Okay, so now if I click this one, it should change to the sun. Okay, so right now it is light, so this should be the default icon. But then if I wait a minute, let's see. Okay, so we have the other icon here. So what I'm going to do is to check if the theme is light right here. So if the theme is equal to light, then I want to keep the moon icon. Otherwise, I want to make it the sun icon. Okay, so we save this, come back to our project, and now look at it. Okay, so everything is working exactly as expected. All right, now let's check everything on mobile. Okay, so we're on the services. Everything is looking amazing. Let's go to the about. Everything is looking beautiful. Let's go to the portfolio. Of course, we should be able to toggle the projects, and everything is looking perfect. And lastly, contact. Okay, and everything is looking amazing here as well. All right, so that is all for this project. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next one.